kicks in and you just want to, like, it's an automatic response to want to go to their rescue, because we've been taught, oh, this is how you fix this, or this is how you fix that. So it's just so innate in us. And I think there's not enough emphasis on men to be raised that way. I think that's why we have this imbalance. So it's like, there's nothing wrong with how we're being raised as women, but I just think it should be probably across both genders.
Hi Lola. Ivy. Hi Lola. Hi everyone. Sorry, I was on another call. I was on my book club, by the way. It went really well. Anyway, one of the things that I think is massive in that answer is because I honestly think, and I'm going to speak candidly, is that a lot of black women, and I will say this generalization, obviously there's exceptions to it, but I think we see black men in us. Like, we see black men, like, we see race first, a lot of black women.
I agree.
Do you know what I mean? And I feel like when I think about black men, I think about myself. And I think we do that. And I think before everyone tries to come, it's not all of us. Because for some reason we have to say that it's not all of you, so it's not all of you. But a lot of black men don't see black women in themselves. That's just the truth. And I think when you don't see something in yourself, you're not going to act the same way. Does that make sense? Like, that's why I feel like a lot of the times black men, some, are not as enraged when things happen to black women as they are when things happen to black men that we are. It's because they don't see themselves, they don't see us in them in the same way that we see them in us. That's my opinion.
And that's interesting because I'm just thinking of like Jay-Z and other rappers, and just like in general, that I've always had this narrative, it's not until I had my daughter that I learned the valuable woman, or that I learned to take care of women. So what happened to the friends that you grew up with, or your sister, or your mother, or your cousins? Like, why were none of them enough? So I think what you're saying is true.
Like, I feel like you're not, like, when we do, I feel like a lot of black women, like, the reason why we don't do a lot of things is because we think, like, how will he feel? And I think that could be a woman thing as well, like, you know, like how we're nurtured and stuff, 100%. But I think blackness has a part of that because we understand the plight of black men in a way that, like, sometimes we do censor ourselves, and we try to not, maybe, like, we think about the ways in which we say things, the language that we use, the way in which we act, the way in which we support. And I think that same care and consideration isn't always applied to black men. And you're right, Lynette, like, it's always, oh, but look how my daughters would be feeling, or being a black woman is enough for you to not do that. Do you know what I mean? Like, our humanity should be enough, but we know historically our humanity has never been enough, which is why we're the most disrespected, etc., etc. It's because if you do see something in yourself, it makes it so much harder for you to be bad to that thing. Do you know what I mean? And I think, like, it's a psychological thing. Histories has always taught that kind of division between the man and the woman. And I think a lot of us need to come with the realization that race is first before anything, before your gender, race first. Like, people say a black woman, a black man, like, it's black, it's not man woman. I mean, it's not man black, like, race is first. So I think, like, as soon as that I think as soon as the mind changes, then actions should hopefully follow. It's my opinion.
Can I just piggyback on that? I agree. I feel like there's a disconnect, because I feel like what you two are saying, I agree. Women, well, black women, we see our sons, we see our brothers, we see everything when we look at these men, and we see the hope and the potential. So even when they're doing us wrong, we always go, no, I know you can be better, I want you to be better. And I feel like there's a disconnect with black men, not all, but when they say, they go, I'm not going to date a dark-skinned black girl because she reminds me of my sister, instead of where we go, I want my child to look like me, where they go, I'm going to, my child's going to have green eyes and curly hair, and it looks nothing like you. And I feel like there's this big disconnect in the way we see each other. We always protect, we're nurturing, and we have to be everything for everyone, and there's no one else pouring into us. And that's me coming from a home that my dad doted on me. I have a loving man that doesn't make me not see these characteristics. I've seen my cousins do it, I've seen my friends do it, and it's like, how old do you have to be until you decide to see the beauty of your women? Like, you've left this path of destruction, and you've hurt so many, you've damaged so many women's self-esteem in your early 20s, and you're expecting, and you don't want to put in the work when it comes to being with these women later on in life. And I just feel like there's a huge disconnect, and I don't know if we have to take some of the blame. I don't want to take any of the blame as black women, but as you said, that whole babying your sons and raising your sons, we come into our own very early, where we let black men just kind of just go on this poor behavioural path, and we hope that they're going to fix it together, and some of them do and some of them don't, but there's always a path of destruction that's been left behind, I find.
Guys, I think someone's phone is echoing. I don't know whose phone it might be. Okay, I think it's gone now. But yeah, I wanted to piggyback off of that as well, because when we saw the colorism a couple of weeks ago, all the stuff that's coming out from colorism or colorist tweets from back in the day, so much of it was from Black men. And like you said, it's like, why is it that these features that you have yourself, they're the ones that you're ridiculing, and they're the ones that are causing you to say Black women should be attacked, Black women should be raped? It just didn't make sense. And somebody else who was actually, I'll say he's a dark-skinned Black man, he was like, you don't see that in any other race. He was like, you don't see white men saying, oh, white women should be raped, and white women are this, and white women are just for sex, and all of this stuff. And any other race that you can think of, Asians, you don't see it. It's literally just with us that you can see that kind of colorism, that kind of attack on your own women. So like you said, maybe it's just not seeing themselves, or not wanting to see themselves, or not wanting to be associated.
I think
sorry. Okay.
No, Kiki, go first.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Hi, I'm Kiki, by the way. I just wanted to basically make the point that Black men need to understand that they still benefit from patriarchy. I do believe in the idea of Black male privilege. Now, obviously, yes, Black men are not privileged in wider society in relation to white people, but I think that Black men have a privilege in relation to Black women. And I've always tried to understand why there is such a disconnect between Black men and Black women, because we as Black women, we're responsible for the existence of the Black man because we give birth to them. So I don't understand why that doesn't then translate in the way that Black men treat Black women. And I do feel that a lot of the patriarchal benefits that Black men have, they then internalize that, and I don't know how that manifests in such a negative way. I mean, Malcolm X had this really famous quote, which is that the most disrespected woman, or the most disrespected person, sorry, is the Black woman. And there is a reason for that. And I mean, just in relation to what you're saying about Black men not really seeing Black women in themselves, that's something that I have tried to wrap my head round, and I do believe it's because they still benefit from patriarchy. If you think about, how Black women are viewed in society in beauty, for example, we are bottom of the totem pole, whereas Black men, they are not expected to have those Eurocentric features, right? They are celebrated for their Black African features, whereas a lot of us Black women, when we have our natural hair out, oh, we don't like it. When we wear wigs, oh, we don't like that. So we can't really, I don't know what it is. I think our features are just picked apart, and I think it's more upsetting when it's coming from the people that we feel that we should rely upon the most. So yeah, I just wanted to make that point.
Good point, Kiki. And I think just coming off of what you've said, what you've highlighted, yes, patriarchy is 100% part of it, but then also there is an element of it like being disconnected to their Blackness, period. And I think that's because there's multiple reasons, but one of the ones that I think resonate with me the most, like the absolute most, is historically how, who was on the field, who was not, when we're talking about colorism, just the basic, like we know, like your proximity to whiteness kind of determined your want, your need, your desire. And we see that because what really annoys me is that when people talk about, oh, I've got a Black woman, and it's like, okay, cool. But sometimes I think, like, can we also say dark skin when we say Black? Because you lot just, it stresses me out, because it's like, we're still quite invisible. So when we say Black women, a lot of us are talking about Black woman. And I know that might be like controversial, but, and when you think about the Black men that do say, yeah, okay, I'm with Black women, like I've got a Black woman and she doesn't look like me. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So colorism still plays a part in it. Or my hair, like it's not, you want good hair, you want it to be my color, but you'll like me more if I kind of had like curlier hair, or maybe a slimmer nose. So I think that the issue with the whole thing is, especially when it comes to colorism, is that they don't want to admit it. And I think that is a major part in it. Like, you don't want to admit to yourself that actually you do, your preference is, which is of course an informed preference and a preference that you can unpack and unlearn, right? But your preference is a light-skinned woman. It is. Like, and the thing is, just know your reasons and your intention behind it, and understand that exists, and understand that you need to do the work to kind of unpack that kind of, where does that come from, right? But I think a lot of Black men they're okay with it. Do you know what I mean? They're okay with their kind of like ideas and beliefs around beauty, their ideas and beliefs around what makes a beautiful black person.
Yeah.
And I think that is a major issue, because if you don't understand something, you can't address it. You just
and I think, yeah, and I think a part of the problem is that I don't think black men take enough time to deconstruct their beliefs, their belief systems. I feel like as a black woman, our existence is more politicized because we are women and we're black women, so we have that, we have both things working against us. So I think as a result, I have had to deconstruct my own thinking. So growing up, I did not like my natural hair. I was teased for my natural hair. It took me a long time to embrace it, but I really took the time to unlearn those just colonized views, really. And I don't think black men, especially when it comes to women, I don't know whether they just see it as a conquest or whether they just think, right, I'm just going to go for a woman and I don't care. But I don't think a lot of them take the time to understand where their preferences come from. You don't come out of the womb saying, oh yeah, I like white men, or oh, come out of the womb, oh yeah, I like light-skinned women. There's a reason, there's a conditioning that's happened. And I think that a lot of black men need to take the time to at least try to understand where that comes from, because in understanding where that comes from, they can then themselves understand those biases, and that is how the connection between black men and black women can be facilitated in some way.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a point on what Kiki said in terms of black men don't want to accept it. I think that's really true, because with what's going on recently, we've seen a lot of maybe like even white or Spanish women fetishizing black men, and you've seen black women actually standing up for black men and saying like, look at what they're doing, and black men will turn their back away. And I'm not saying all black men, but this is what I've seen a lot. And I feel like at times it feels like they don't want to accept the reality of it. They have that advantage that women of all races like them.
Exactly.
But when it comes to actually understanding what we are trying to tell them, I feel like they try to always just undermine it. It's always undermined. When you put the facts down, it's always, you know, I don't know, maybe, you think you're not nice, or just trying to undermine it in certain ways. And it's like, that's not the case. We're actually showing you what we're seeing. And sometimes it's quite frustrating because the message isn't coming across. I don't know what it is.
It's because like they think that they need to, and
they benefit from it.
They benefit from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like one thing that always pees me off to my core is I don't need you to validate my thing. If I'm telling you, that, and I am saying as a black, this is my, why are you saying but? Like, are you a black woman? Like that. And I think that that's what Kiki's talking about. There's definitely patriarchy in there, but don't say it like, honestly, do not censor yourself. I think it's like Angela Davis, my queen and my hero, basically says something around this, like, you know, a white woman wants to be equal to white men, black men want to be equal to white men, but then it's like, where are black women left in this? Like, where are we in this fight? And I think often when black women say, this is how I feel, I keep hearing buts, and I'm gonna need black men to stop saying but, because I'm not hearing. Like, I always hear a but. Oh, but not me. Oh, but maybe it's because you lot are like this.
Yeah.
And I honestly, it really irritates. Oh, because it's like, we don't do that. Like when that says I'm being killed by police, I can't get a job. We are the first to be like, but let me help you. You might even write the CV for the man. You don't even know him. And I'm like, that same kind of empathy where it's just lacking. Because all I'm hearing is, oh, but you don't have to be so aggressive. It's not all of us. Sir.
And I think, you know, another point that I've really been thinking about is the idea of Black female vulnerability. I think as Black women, we are, I feel, the pillars of the Black community. And I feel that we have such a pressure to hold it together, to be strong, you know, this kind of trope of the strong Black woman. And so as a result, you can't show that much vulnerability. You have to be strong. You have to be the ones to look after people. And I think as a result, our vulnerability is kind of stripped away. So even when we do try to express ourselves, or to say that, look, I'm feeling this way, or I want to express myself, I almost feel that pretty much the whole world, including Black men, almost refute that vulnerable side of us. And so they just think, no, okay, whatever. They don't try to understand our emotions. And I think that toughening, I think, is quite damaging, which is why I think this whole idea of the strong, independent Black woman, I personally resent that. because it doesn't really allow people to connect with us on an emotional level. So I think in terms of why Black men may be dismissive of Black female issues, I think a lot of the time they just view Black women as these tough, you know, these tough iron ladies, when in fact there's a lot that goes on that we would like to be vulnerable, you know, and share with.
That's so, and you know what, we get it from our own, like, how many times has your mum said don't cry? Do you know what I mean? Like, or like, you have to be strong, or like, that is so true. Like, and
that's a good point.
And don't you think it's so strange, because you would see, like, in patriarchy and stuff, men are supposed to be these strong protectors and providers, etc. But often my examples of strength have been Black women, and I find that so interesting, because I think things depicted, not if you're on the ground, like where I'm from, most Black households are led by the ones that I know, single Black women. Do you know what I mean? The ones that are like paying the weight, single Black women. And it's like the fact that that type of strength isn't translated into, like, first of all, we should have to be, number one, and number two, the fact that we are, it makes us strong and stuff like that. But really, your job as a Black man is do better. Why do you want us to have to go through so much just in order to just exist? That's my we're just trying to live. Like,
and another thing is, sometimes you'll see this on social media a lot. She was down with me when I was struggling. She was down with me when I didn't have a car, when I didn't have this. And it's like, why? Why should we have to endure the struggle? Why? White people don't say this. I haven't seen any other race say this. Like, I get it. You all want to grow together, but it doesn't mean that I should be sleeping in a hostel with you, or, you know, the bottom of the bottom. Like, people, they need to stop putting us on that level and, like, actually uphold us. And that's the frustrating point of it.
Yeah, and I think following on from that, I think, you know, aside from the fact that, yes, Black women are always there in the kind of embryonic stages of the struggle, I think another issue is that they are then not with the Black men when they're celebrating their successes. So with Kevin Hart, for example, when he was a struggling comedian, basically not making a dime, his Black wife was, you know, the long-suffering Black wife there for him. As soon as he became successful, he became the Kevin Hart, left the Black woman, went for a light-skinned woman, and now has had these babies, and the new light-skinned wife had the audacity to then say to the ex-wife, oh yeah, you need to get over it, I'm the wife now. So, you know, these light-skinned women, they actually, you know, I just think a lot of the time, and I don't want to generalize, I really don't, but I just think in that particular example, it just goes to show that a lot of the Black women who are there in the struggle, they are then dismissed when they are celebrating the success. And I think that is a real issue.
And just to touch on what you guys were saying in terms of vulnerability, I think the solution, or part of the solution, is you have to just learn to put yourself first. This is what I say to a lot of Black women. If you continue to try and uphold this narrative of the strong woman, you will be more or less just held down, and you'll be held back because you'll get tired, you'll be frustrated, and you won't be able to, you know, progress in the way that you want to progress for your life. So I think as a solution, or part of the solution, is definitely joining spaces whereby you can be vulnerable, you can focus on whether it's self-healing, whether it's self-improvement, whatever it is, to, you know, just progress. Because if people won't give us what we need, we have to just get it ourselves to a certain extent.
That's true.
But I don't think you should let this issue, like, hold you back, if that makes sense.
I agree with
No,
that.
definitely.
I also think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice. Sometimes as women, I don't know how it is for you guys, but like in Caribbean and African culture, sometimes you have the bitter aunties, the bitter matriarchal figures that don't do any good in knowing the world that we're coming into. And that's just our internal work that we have to do for ourselves. I find it's not just all about the men, because the men, we need to put them in positions to step up. Like, sometimes I play dumb. Like, you will carry this box for me, you know? Like, I'm not gonna, and that, my dad taught me that. Like, sometimes just let men be that space, whereas women are, Black women specifically, are disappointed so early in life that we'll go, well, screw you guys, I'll do it myself. And it ends up being something that ends up being a disservice to ourselves. And then not only on that, we don't do well to teach our daughters and nieces and little girls in the community that it's okay, not to say don't rely on a man, but like, you know, make sure you're sorted, as you said, put yourself first, invest in yourself first, but hold these men accountable. They have a job, and their first job is to be providers and protectors of us. And we forget that, to teach them that that's their first job, because we're so busy protecting them from the outside world. And then when it comes down to our little girls, like, we need to be building each other up. Like, I have these two little cousins. They have the same name, but one's dark skin and they're both equally as beautiful, and one's mixed race, but one's got like really long hair. And like, when they're the same age, and when we were in family events, like, people will go straight to the mixed race one and be like, look at your hair. And she hates how her long hair is. She's very tomboyish, but the first thing that they point out is how beautiful her hair is. And they forget how beautiful the other cousin is. And it's like, I have to kind of jump in and get the conversation started for her, because that's my duty to make sure she doesn't go around. And then we have this thing where inadvertently she's going to end up looking at mixed race girls, which are another category to Black women. As much as everybody is under the same culture, there is still a different category. She's going to end up looking at her thinking, what is it about you? And then there's a resentment there. And we have to do our thing as women outside of patriarchy. We need to make sure we're building each other up, no matter how we look. So I think sometimes we really do ourselves a disservice because we forget to pay it forward and make sure we're stepping in for other girls. And some of us don't get to experience at a decent age where we can make a healthy turnaround. Some women get to experience that in their teenage years, where they're like, actually, forget what these boys think. But then sometimes you have women in their 40s still looking for the approval of men. So when we notice people like that, we have to start building them up, because we know no one else is going to do it for us. And until we get to that time where it's mainstream, we can't keep on going, oh, then they turn to this and look at that person. Let me stay in my lane. If that man doesn't want me, then more for you, because then I guess you're not for me. But there's plenty of guys out there. And another thing that we do as women is sometimes the men we want and the bad boys we're attracted to, they don't want us. And it's okay. And we need to learn to stop liking the guys that don't want us. Everybody likes that stuff. But sometimes the little nerdy boy, you can kind of brush him up, take him into Zara, or spruce you up, and we'll be all right. You get what I mean? But sometimes we don't want to put that word that's popular. And some really good guys that we're overlooking because we internalize a lot of rubbish as well.
That is such a good point, because I was talking to my cousin Lynette about this. She's on the call. And we were talking about how, like, our own social conditioning, like a lot of like Black women, we also have our conditioning. We also have our preferences that are made for us by our TV and all these things, music, and, you know, who looks like they could take care of you more, and is all these things. And it's like, there is so much work that can be done internally as well, especially before, like, and I think what you said was really good, actually, when you talked about the approval of men. Like, that should not be something that you center. Like, you need to focus on yourself as well. But what I think is difficult is that men need to also still do their part, because what happens is, at the end of the day, if you are somebody who is interested in a relationship with men, just because somebody, and I've realized this, just because somebody is a good guy or he's a nerd, it doesn't constitute to him necessarily treating you correctly. It doesn't. And maybe the odds are more in your favor. But what happens is that sometimes you then think, oh yeah, he's a different type of person, so I might get a different type of treatment. But patriarchy affects everybody. So I think that one thing that we have to notice is that, yes, we need to do the work, and yes, we need to uplift each other, but that isn't a direct solution to the issues and the treatment Black men have when it comes to us. Because we know this, we know that we're beautiful and all these things, and a lot of us do the work and we do try, but we go on dates and we get in relationships, and the same issue occurs. So I think both things need to work simultaneously together in order for us to get anywhere, because at the end of the day, like, they have to do their part. And I know you're not saying that, and I know you're saying that, you know, we're speaking for us, but I think as much as we're speaking for us, I hope the Black men in here are also taking notes, like how you can do better as well. So yeah, it goes both ways.
Sorry, I was just going to say, carry on still. In 10 minutes, we're going to open the floor for, I guess, the men to then respond, and I'll start some questions in about 10 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you. LaShawn said something about accountability. We need to hold men accountable. I thought that was really important, because I think, especially from what I've seen online recently, men don't hold each other accountable either. And I think that's something that they need to learn to do. If your homeboy is putting out colourless tweets or making colourless comments, call him up on it. If your homeboy is assaulting a woman or harassing a woman sexually, call him up on it. Like somebody else said a really interesting comment the other day. Somebody said the reason, you know, people always like, oh, girl groups and girlfriends always break up, and girl friendships never last. And she was like, that's because we hold each other accountable. If you're doing wrong, I'll call you out on your shit. Whereas with men, they'll look the other way. Like even in our friendship groups, like Ivy knows that we've had like friends who have done like really wrong things, and it's like me and Ivy will be like, yo, fix up.
Yeah.
The boys are silent.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll be silent,
Yeah.
and sometimes they'll even go beyond and defend. But maybe he was thinking like this, and maybe it's because she did that, and Nah, call your boys in their shit. Because with us, they only listen to us to a certain extent. Most of the time, they're like, yeah, angry black woman. Again, this whole narrative, angry black woman. Whereas if your boy is calling you up on something, I feel like you're going to give it a bit more credibility. So I think they need to have the confidence to know that it's okay to not always back your boy, and it's okay to not always root for him. It's okay to call them out, because you have a responsibility to hold each other accountable.
I think
that is friendship.
Yeah, I think that is such an excellent point. You know, I think a lot of the time this kind of bro mentality where they all kind of, you know, egg each other on, really. And I think that, you know, defending a black woman, if let's say you hear that someone is making a derogatory comment, about a black woman, like you said, they should have the confidence to call it out, whether you're attracted to the person or not. It's not even about attraction. This is just about right or wrong. If I was with a friend and she was dogging out a black man who was short, stout, I wasn't attracted to him, I would still call that person out because it's wrong. And again, it goes back to, you know, the idea that if you offend a black man, you offend me. If you offend blackness in general, you offend me. And I think that a lot of black men need to have that same mentality, that if you offend a black woman, if you offend a black man, if you offend anybody who is black, you need to be offended enough to say, no, I'm not going to tolerate this. So I think you are absolutely right that a lot of men need to hold themselves accountable, because if the message from women is not getting through, then like you said, maybe the message will become a bit clearer if one of their own men is sharing that message. So I think that was a really brilliant point that you raised.
About that. So with that being said, do you feel like we can, thank you again for sharing all your points, and even as I'm talking, that some people aren't talking in the group, they very much want to get involved as well, which is good to see. I'm talking to black men in general, that's what I'm talking about. So I guess without further ado, do you want us to now start, is there anything else you women want to say now, just before we allow the men to speak? Or
Yeah,
gosh, go ahead.
protect black women, and don't add a but and it is and no, not me before. Just think about it.
Yeah.
Thank you for a strong opinion, Abby. Always appreciated.
And one more thing, just for me, just to piggyback off of what Ivy's just said. Yeah, just as much as you are hearing everything we're talking about today, just remember that black women are vulnerable too. We're not angry. We like to give our opinion. There's nothing wrong with that. We like to be curious. It doesn't mean we're being aggressive. It just means we have a brain. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And thank you. With that being said, I think we can now, I guess, begin to start opening up the panel then for discussion. I think if it's easier for the guys, because I know a few guys here will have got quite a few things to say, so I'll go first anyway. What would you say is the most disappointing one? If there's one particular thing that we black men do that disappoints women the most, we black women, what would you say it is?
Question my pain and think that you're in a position to validate it. I honestly could, there's nothing for me that is, there's a few things, but to me that is incredibly disrespectful, infuriating, and just very painful for me to share my experiences, and valid experiences, and not just from me, but women, my women, like black women, and for you to then say, and like have this really kind of disbelief, number one, but also two, like feel the need that you have to validate it for it to be real or true, or you need to quantify it. Like that to me is so painful. Like not even to, you're not listening to understand or even to hear me out. You're only listening so that you can kind of interject and center yourself. And for me, it's very painful. So yeah, I would say that one thing.
I can't imagine how frustrating it must be, especially, for example, I was looking at the Misha B situation, and you had black men making excuses for Talisa and apologizing on the behalf, like, oh, it's okay, Talisa. I'm thinking, bro, when white people do it to each other, when they excuse others for their racist actions, we're no different. Like, what are you doing? I'm really thinking, are you guys mad? Like, why are you saying, yeah, it's okay forgiving a white woman for the actions for dangerous actions committed towards a black woman. So now I can imagine reading that as a black woman, it must be extremely frustrating and tiring. Extremely.
Yeah, I just think the most frustrating thing is kind of being subjugated by the very people that we should be able to lean on the most. I think we already experience a tough time with racism from white people, from Asian people, from a lot of other races, but I just think internalized racism, I think, is the most painful. You know, the idea that racism is so powerful that you end up being indoctrinated by it, and then that manifesting into the poor treatment of the women who share the same skin tone as you. I just think it's so frustrating, like you said, that a lot of black men, they don't publicly call out the wrongdoings of other black men, but they are very quick to point out the wrongdoings of black women. I think it's that imbalance that I find quite painful and difficult to deal with a lot of the time.
Yeah, no, understandable. And thank you, I guess, for answering that. If anybody else wants to comment on that, please do. But I know Alex and Elliot and some of the other guys in here wanted to ask the piece. So again, guys, the floor is yours.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Is this working?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. God, I forgot what my question was going to be. I guess mine was a bit more of a statement, I suppose. In my household, and I guess many of the black males that I know, we all have lived under matriarchies where the mother has been the queen of the family. So maybe my perception is different, but also I guess some of the experiences that you guys have mentioned, which are incredibly valuable, because as a black man, I guess I don't get to listen in on these conversations that often. I suppose I don't know many men who have these ideals or ways of looking at black women. All of my friends are married to, I think we want to say, dark-skinned black women. My mum was a dark-skinned woman. I've always had a very high level of respect. But what I have noticed, and I think we spoke about introspection, about looking inside ourselves and trying to understand what these pull and push factors are on us. I think that there definitely is, especially with inside the media and the system itself, there are lots of mechanisms for making us feel more connected to or connecting white women and women outside of our racial group with doing well or doing better. And I don't think all black men, sorry, this is not a question, but I don't think all black men recognize that. I think they don't see it until it's pointed out. I don't know why that is. I don't know why that happens to us, but it's definitely a thing. But also, things like, even if you go as far back as school and you open up a textbook and you're talking about women, the model of the woman is a white woman. If you are talking to someone about, I want to be an astronaut, and you're gonna, I don't know, go to wherever, any of the people that are listed there, the identifiers are always done in a white way, and I think that plays a toll and effect over time. And it's not a but, and it's not an excuse. I think it's just something that I think someone said, that you need to recognize and kind of decode and understand why are you behaving the way that you are. So I guess my question would be is, how do we start a system where we can rebrand, I guess I don't even want to say a trophy black woman, because that's wrong as well, but how do you rebrand the black unit? How do we rediscover that and make that seem valuable again, if it doesn't appear to seem valuable to some?
You know what? I think you actually answered your question, Elliot, because I think one thing that you said is that a lot of people aren't aware, and I think education is the part that is key. I think we all have grown up in a society where we've seen whiteness and your proximity to whiteness to be something to be adorned and valued, and it means that you're even parts of it. Well, society suggests that you're going to get a better life if you're the closer your proximity is to whiteness. That's just the reality of the world that we live in. And I think a massive part of it is the miseducation that we get in the schooling system, especially as it pertains to the black unit, and where we come from, who we are as a people, what our roots are, and the fact that actually black women were the first, and also like everything comes from us. So I think like, when people, and this is not just for Black men, because I know that just Black people in general, like a lot of us are misinformed. And I think a lot of what you can see as your preference and love, the reason why it was missed out of the textbooks and everything like that, it was by design. It's so that you don't see your power, your strength, your beauty, so that and all of that works in your psychological, so you can stay somewhat oppressed. And within oppressed people, it's easier to manage and pit against each other and to be divisive. So I would say, in terms of the preferences, which are definitely learned, so if something is learned, it can also be unlearned through time and obviously through education. But I think the first thing that needs to be done is to educate yourself. And before you said that, an understanding of this is what I need to realize in myself, because I think that's the hard thing that people grapple with, like knowing that you have these preferences, and that isn't just by chance. You have these preferences, and I think you have to, number one, realize them. But then after you've realized them, you need to do the work to educate yourself in order to see, yes, Black women in yourself, but also Black women is beautiful outside of anyone that's of service to you, like your mom, your auntie, your daughter. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of it comes from education and understanding how valuable, beautiful, strong, like, I even hate the word strong, but what we are and what we mean. And I think that a lot of that, in terms of we're looking at like the Black family unit, I think a lot of it comes through education, because a lot of us, we are misinformed. Like that's how we've been raised to in the society to be misinformed. So
I did have just one thing that I wanted to, because you said something that was, I had thought about before, but I still don't know where to place it, is that in my mind, even when I was young, I went through phases of liking people from all different regions, like, and I'm going to be really honest, some of this is really silly, but it might have come from, I started to watch some films, right? And those films then inspired me to want to change the way I dress, or the way, as you're discovering yourself. And, one period might be, like I got into, and started to fetishize, I guess, Chinese culture. And I think that came through from, Kung Fu movies to, there was an Asian explosion that we had here with Romeo Must Die, and mixing Black and Chinese people together. And all of that then had an effect, I think. And I noticed that across a lot of my peers, that had an effect. And so the marketing of things is really potent. But one of the things I was going to pick up on was that in my mind, and especially I'd like to speak on behalf of my friends in terms of Black men who live in their own, in their households of a matriarchy, that Black women are perceived to be powerful and strong, and therefore more robust. And I think that sometimes, as much as that can be a gift, it's also a curse at the same time, because we perceive you to be bulletproof, which is, I think, is fallacy. But then at the same time, definitely looking towards, like my mother, like she was very resilient, and so you kind of project that onto everyone, which is not the right thing to do. And I wonder, how do you separate that? How do you separate?
I think you have in it, because you basically said it. Like, you've said that, like, the way that you perceive blackness is by strength and so on, but you haven't mentioned like romantic partner. You know what I mean? Like lover. Like, do you know what I mean? Beautiful. Like, not that you're not saying that about your mum, but you're basically pinning up on what? Yeah, of course, Black women. But I think you also have to come from understanding is that we've had to be. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've had to be. Like, and I think that as soon as that part changes, like, because you've only seen us as these things, it takes away. And that's what I think. It's like, we're always like, oh, I love my mum and my sister and my auntie and my grandma. But it's like, she's beautiful, I want to like date her. Like, that part is missing. That part is missing. And of course, media does a disservice. But I think also a lot of the onus is on ourselves. Do you know what I mean? It's the same way that like media influences a lot of things, like how maybe you perceive Black men. Because then Black women can say on TV and stuff, you hear things about Black men being killers and murder, which is just rubbish. But we know that that's what we've been fed, but we know different. And I think the reason why we know different is because we see Black men in us. Because a lot of Black women, again, come from the same backgrounds where, there isn't a dad maybe in the household, not all, but some. And I think that the reason why we still want and love Black men is because we see them in us. And that could be because we're women and all these other things. But I think Black men need to also take that same approach, because I think it would yield different results. So, yeah.
Like what Ivy's saying, like more so in like be the change that you want to see and provide yourself with balance. Like, we all come to an age where we know that our reality isn't usually what is shown on TV. So it's like, how do Black women seem to get it and know that we can still see more in you? But Black men seem to just go, oh yeah, Black and Asian person on TV, that's what I'm gonna do. Like, it's how do you move past that and say, okay, let me Google black movies with black love interest?
Yeah.
Or I want a relationship. Am I vulnerable? So in terms of expressing, if you want to be a CEO one day and you need your woman to look the part, and you've associated leveling up with white womanhood and think that she's the only person that can be on your arm for you to have the image that you've always seen, it's like, okay, let me be the first and be that guy that other people look up to with my black wife. She carries herself well. She's just as accomplished, you know, and being vulnerable with her to say, these are my dreams. Can you meet me there? Are you willing to take this journey with him? And I feel like a lot of black men, they don't make themselves open to black women. As you said, like, you guys see us as these robust people that are just hard, where we want to be vulnerable with you, but we have to be hard because the world keeps on beating us down, like more so than you, because it's like the world beats you and then you beat us as well as them beating us. And it's like, if you want that life and if you want to make a change, it's like, be the change that you want to see. There's people that you can grow together and mold each other into the virgin. As long as you guys agree on where you guys want to be, then there should be no reason why you can't have that with brown and black faces, you know?
Love that.
And where do we start that? Where does that come from? I guess, like, what would the initiatives look like? Because, like, let's say today I wanted to be able to make that change for some of the young men that come behind me, or you know, people who I know. What would I? Because from my perspective, I think media for me is a really big thing. I think, especially when we think about like the difference between catwalk models, glamour models, and I guess your everyday kind of like consumer models, there is, to me, it feels like there's a difference in treatment to if you're a black woman as opposed to being a mixed race or brown woman. So I know I can recognize that there needs to be changes there, because it seems like, you know, if you're not, you know, super black and super removed from, I guess, what you might call a classical white norm, you cannot be a supermodel, right? Like they're always looking for the extreme in that sense of the understanding. But when it comes to being at home, you know, like a DFS advert and stuff like that, you cannot have a very dark-skinned woman. I find that quite confusing, and I see it consistently, almost as if like it's some. Well, let's not get into conspiracy theories, but you know, so how would we, you know, outside of media, is there other things that we can do in order to, again, like change that perception? Like what?
I think it leads on to, like, I'm sorry if I said your name. Is it Lasayan? Did I say that correct? Yes, it's towards what you said. Like, lead by example. Like, for me, I saw all this stuff by me on media, etc. Yeah, 100%. But I also had examples in the home. Like, I had my brother, I had my mum. I was around black men. I saw how beautiful they were, and I was like, I like black men. I think that they're funny and all these other things. Like, and I think also lead by example. If you want to see the change, maybe date black women. Not saying that you don't, but there's a lot of black men that don't, right? And I think that that's a major thing. Like, date black women. Like, that is one thing that you can actually tangibly do. And then there's other things as well. I think it depends on where you look. I think it's too little now. Social media is exploded so much that you can find black content. You can find a black man with a black woman everywhere. Like, you can find black love. You can Google black love. It's everywhere. Like, there's documentaries on black love, successful and beautiful black love. And I think that it's education for me, because it's like, the more that you expose people to these things, that the same way that media and, you know, the catwalk and all those other things are informing you certain things, also make sure that you're watching documentaries on black love, that you're seeing black women as romantic interests. Do you know what I mean? That you're leading by example, that you're like, you're showing your boys or younger guys like, oh, do you know what, I've got a date, and you know, this is really beautiful woman, and she's, or even little things like if you've got kids and so on, like, oh, this woman is so beautiful, and like, they're black dark-skinned women. I think things like that is what really can be like, it can ignite things in people. And I think education is a massive, massive thing. It's how you view us as well. So yeah,
I agree. Like, as you said, you set the example. So, you know, maybe some women may not like this, but if you do like more traditional or chivalrous things for your woman in public, like, no matter if there's a group of guys down the road and you still turn around and open the car door for your woman, you don't care. Like, you actually love her, like, fully. and openly. That's the word I'm looking for. You love her openly. And I think that's with Black people, we're not allowed, we know we have so much love for each other, but we're not allowed to love them openly. So you don't, even if you're like in the workplace and a Black woman's getting it to her, even just coming and being like, you're right, like sometimes, and just being that person that she can talk to, so it doesn't look like, oh, you don't speak to the Black woman in the office. That makes a difference. So then she ends up trusting you in more ways than you even know. You've brought like social capital with her, because you've invested into her, and that small act of kindness, she's now looked at you and she will revere you, so she can give that back to you. But I do think it's in our everyday actions, because we all know the supermodel, I'm not a supermodel, I'm 5'2". So I can't expect anything or anyone to look at me as a supermodel. I'm not, you know. So it's just kind of making that distinction, like to say that's their world. We know Hollywood exists. We know there's escapism and it exists for a reason. But let's deal with our reality. What do we do in our everyday life that feeds into us building each other up and building each other's self-esteem and seeing the beauty in one another, even though it doesn't match what's on all the billboards? Because we know that those people are actually the anomalies of society. They're not normal. We're the normal people that are at varying heights, different weights and things like that. That's why body shaming and things like that become such a thing, because we're the normal people, they're the anomalies. You don't see girls just walking around at 6 foot, slim, know how to take pictures. It's not normal. We actually start recognizing that we're the norm. It starts with us, and they're just somebody that we get to enjoy as something different in society, but are just as valuable, you know?
Yeah, I think that's such a brilliant point. I think that a lot of the time we rely so much on the media to dictate our decisions, and I think that a lot of it is being proactive with who you surround yourself with. So for example, with me, my whole life I've been in predominantly white environments. I went to predominantly white primary school, I went to predominantly white secondary school, and it was only up until for my whole kind of formative years I was always one of very few Black people, right? So because of that, there was this assumption that, oh yeah, well, I have more of a proximity to whiteness, so that's what I'm going to lean to. But it was only when I got to university, now my university was Warwick, so it's still predominantly white. However, I made the conscious decision to surround myself with people that looked like me and who could relate to my experience. So there are a lot of people who are surprised that that I tend to kind of, date Black men or whatever, but it's because I myself have put myself in an environment where I'm around those people. If you're in an environment where it's very homogenous, that is what you tend to lean towards. But for me, I wanted to see myself in my friends and in my surroundings. So I think just carrying on, just piggybacking off the point that was made, it's your everyday interactions, putting yourself in, going to certain events, going to certain talks, speaking to friends, and not just accepting that, oh, well, I'm in a predominantly white environment, so I'm just going to deal with it. No, you have to make the active effort, and I did, which is why I've always loved being around Black people, but I think I gained a greater appreciation for that when I went to university and I made the effort. So I do think that a lot of it is your environment, and you choose, especially when you're an adult, you choose your environment. You do choose it. So it's being practiced.
I think also your language. Oh, sorry.
No, you carry on.
Thank you. I was just going to make a point about language as well, like being mindful of the words you use. So when you speak about Black women, you hear a lot of people say aggressive, abrasive, attitudes, even like sexy. Some people might think that's a compliment, but be wary of the labels that you use, because even with people in general, like you hear a lot of terminology such as gangs and thugs. I think language is always really important because it sets a narrative and it has a subconscious effect as well. So when you were describing your mum and your household, you were like queen, and Sanchez in the chat, who was calling Lashana a supermodel. I think those are just subtle things. Like, even if you don't want to date a Black woman, because not every Black man is going to be attracted to a Black woman, and that's fine, but be mindful of the language that you use, because like you said, the younger generations are listening and they're going to form that opinion that Black women are strong and have attitude and are aggressive. But if you change your language, and if you're mindful of the way you speak about Black women, around, not even around just them, just around anyone in general, and how you speak about us in general, that can help to slowly change the narrative.
And I think what Lynette's saying is so key, like, hail up Black women, period. Like, in every space, in every environment, and I agree with you completely. Like, I'm not from the belief or understanding that, like, you know, if you're a black man, you have to only date black women. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, even if you choose not to, black women should still always be up here. You should always uphold black women. Even if you don't like them, even if you don't fancy them, even if you're not attracted to them, you should always have black women as, you know, up here, because that's where we deserve to, that's where we are, right? And I think that level of understanding, that's why I say lead by example, because for me it's really hard to believe people if I don't see that they're walking what they're talking. And that doesn't mean that that you can't be dating outside of your race. But what I'm saying is I listen to how you talk about us. Do you know what I mean? And then I think from there, that's where you can understand, and that's where you can create change. It's exactly what Kiki was saying, like, despite everything, like, despite how, you know, being around your proximity to whiteness or being around white people, that doesn't determine, you know, what you're going to be into, or, you know, that doesn't determine your blackness. It just doesn't. Like, you do. And I think it's a conscious decision. It really is. And you have to make it. So I think that's where we're at.
Well, thanks for that. Alex, sorry, you're saying something?
Yeah, so basically all I was saying is, I don't know who was talking before, where they said that they're usually around white people most of the time. That was me, and it all changed obviously when I went to uni and I lived with a bunch of black people. if evidently, remember Ivan, you and there others. But where I come from, I can go 3-4 days, maybe even 5 days without seeing a black woman ever. So like, where was I going with this? Sorry, yeah. I think some people just need to make a conscious decision to uphold black women. Some people are just the environment they grew up in has kind of played a massive part in how they think. Especially in school back in the day, obviously having only 2 to 3 black people in a class, you kind of, unless you actually actively go look for your people, or you actively go learn about your people, you're not gonna get a chance. So I completely lost my train of thought for Ivan, but all I'm saying is, yeah, I understand what that girl was saying, because I'm from the same boat.
I mean, you're from Gloucester, Alex, isn't it? So I can imagine. Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
I mean, I'm in a relationship, and I'm in a relationship with a mixed race girl. But like I said, even if I wanted to date a black girl, I'm not in. It's impossible, but it wouldn't be easy. Maybe one, it might be my virgin sister, for example, and that might not run. Do you know what I mean? It's a very, very sort of close, sort of tight-knit community.
It's interesting. Sorry, go on, Elliot.
No, I was just going to add into that in terms of, like, I guess my experience, and where I guess it overlaps with the gentleman who just spoke, is that I went to a school that was predominantly white as well, with a friend of mine. Hopefully, I don't know if she's joined the call, but I think we were predominantly around white males who perceived white females to be, you know, beautiful and whatnot. And so in turn, your mind starts to focus in that way. And then it wasn't until, like, I started to get, you know, quite a bit older towards the end of school, did the complete opposite happen, where, like, I then started to, like, fetishize black women, and in like specifically dark women. And I think it was weird, because I was kind of jumping lines from, I live in Lewisham, but I would go all the way out to Kent. So, you know, I'm going into a completely white area. There's a lot of NF. There's a lot of kind of things there that you know, kind of like bring you down and kind of tear you apart. And you come back to Lewisham, a predominantly black area. And as you start to understand your area, and as you start to get older, and I guess find more friends in your area, it then changes your mindset again. And then you flip into another mode where, like, the opposite is now, I guess you're more sensitive to it. And I think in some spaces, I can imagine how that could be quite difficult for some men to grasp that their environment is making them who they are. Like you said, Lynette, it does start to generate behaviors. Yeah, sorry, that's all I wanted to add.
Can I chime in on this one? It's something I've always told my sister, and it's something, again, it's just for the men and women to respond on this one. I feel like for a lot of us who could maybe come from single parent homes, black males, I feel like there is an imbalance between the way we kind of perceive black women, because we've seen black women as our carers, nurturers, providers. But for those in single parent homes, they're our enforcer. They're the people that will bring us, you know, discipline. They're our disciplinarians. And so do you feel growing up, I don't know, for the most part, do you feel growing up we struggle to push the two away. Like, so then we see that kind of representation in all black women. We may see like, oh, they're nice and sweet, but also that they've got that full soul. Do you think that maybe that could be where we think, oh, that aggressiveness or nastiness? Because if our mums were black or aunties and they were doing this to us, maybe the women we're with are going to be exactly the same. I don't know. It's something I was spoke to my sister a little while ago. Seeing unable to separate the two.
No, it's something that we get into about, because for me, I'm just like, the reason why me and Ivan kind of just go back and forth on that one is because I just feel like there's so many people who play a particular position, but you can see them as a multifaceted, nuanced person. But for some reason, when it pertains to black women, it's a monolithic experience. Like, we can only be in this particular way and this particular experience. And to me, it just doesn't cut it. Like, not all black women are the same, not all people are the same, and we don't play the same position, period. Like, mummy might be, Ivan's my twin, mummy might be an enforcer and all these things, but again, understanding she had to be, like, in a single parent home. So it's like, you can't like judge a people based on your one single.
And now my question was, the problem is, do you think we do?
Yeah, of course you do. Of course. That was my question. Do you think we do? And Ivan, we spoke about this candidly. We spoke about how like you perceive black women because of me being like the way that I am. But a lot of those things, this is such an important thing to say. My personality is my personality, and it's not necessarily linked to my blackness. Like, I'm a loud person because I'm loud. Like, not because I'm black. Do you know what I mean? I'm loving and caring, and I would like to think that those things are innately who I am in my soul, and my soul isn't, do you know what I mean? It isn't linked to necessarily the color of my skin. And I always say this because if we then assume that, then we're assuming that black people are monolithic, and we are not. I think that it's so important to note those things as well. And also, sometimes the positions and the roles that we play is because we've had to be. I've been socially conditioned to be a bit, do you know what I mean? But I grew up in Lewisham. Do you know what I mean? And Lynette knows that we all grew up together, we grew up on blocks. So that was our social conditioning. And I don't think that that's specific to the color of my skin. So I think it's really important for us to unpack and learn and unlearn those things that we associate to blackness, because that's not what makes you a black woman. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think
it's not. But following on from what Ivan said, hi everyone, I'm Shireen, and it's interesting the way you said that, Ivan, because I'm a mum. I've got 3 sons. My oldest son is 30 next month. And watching him go through and his choices in women has been really interesting. And the point that you made there, Ivan, I think is quite interesting from the perspective that, as raising them as my 2 eldest sons as a single parent, my second son, who's 27 now, I had a very similar conversation to him about that. And, you know, he hasn't dated much, and I'm a mum, and I'm, you know, who what's up, you know, if he ever says, oh, Mum, I've met a nice girl, the first thing I say in my head, so I don't say it out loud, is she black? You know, it's the question that pops into my head. He expects me to ask it now. But when I had a conversation with him about that, it's really interesting about what you said, because he does see me as growing up as being quite a loving mum, first of all. But I was a disciplinarian. Things had to get done. Me and him got into it a couple of times when he was growing up, so I had to be quite a tough exterior. There were times, we talked about vulnerability earlier, where I was struggling but I didn't show any vulnerability. So his perceptions as a child, and I'm not talking about an adult man, but from birth to 7, was this one-sided woman. You know, she's mum, she's there, she's a carer, she's a nurturer, she's disciplinarian, blah, blah, blah. But he would never see me as a lover. He's never seen me in a relationship. He's never seen me, because being single, when I had boyfriends and stuff, that was separate from my children. So he never actually saw me in that light as being a loving person. He never saw me as in a relationship being lovely and giggly and all that kind of stuff. And I think that has played a part in his, we live in quite a white area.
I'll tell you this now, Shireen, as well, kind of growing up even just amongst black people and black friends and whatnot, and this is just on a male topic. Plenty of times I've been around black groups, black boys just overhearing lots of stuff, and you hear lots of these things as to why, like, I've heard lots of things as to why black men don't like black women. So, I'm not going to get into it now because there's a lot of it BS crap that is just like ignorance. But just some of the more interesting takes I would hear was just they're all the same. And then I'll challenge someone and be like, so why do you think black women are just all the same? You know what, they're all loud, they all just want to shout, yell at you, they want to tell you off, they want to do this, they want to do that. Then my question is always, where does that come from? So who told you this, or who that is? So I think that's what kind of inspired my question now. Just where it is from. Is it the home experience? Is it the outside experience? Because it's what I was telling to Ivy, you know, dating a black woman is not you have to come with your A game as a man. I think. I've kind of told Ivy that, and just my experience, you have to come correct. You can't just come with the BS. It's like black women are, you know, we
have expectations.
They have expectations, and we can't just, as guys we like to skirt. Let's not lie, as guys we like to skirt around, rah. We do. Let's not lie, as guys we like to rah. And, you know, Elliot's smiling, but you know, I'm telling the truth. We like to rah. And I feel like when black women are so attuned, they're so locked on that, and they're like, we can't get away with things. And I feel that's also another element as to why maybe black guys feel that kind of, they don't want resistance, but we should expect it, but we don't want it.
I just wanted to add to that point. This is just kind of a question or something that I just thought of in relation to what you're just saying. Do you think that a lot of these qualities, such as strength and being a disciplinarian, do you think that may challenge a black man's masculinity? Do you think maybe that's why black men are not receptive to women who have those strong qualities?
I'll let anyone else. I would like, obviously, someone, maybe Elliot or Alex or Cornell or whoever's in here, to add something to that, but I'll go first and say, and I would like to hear from other guys as well, but I'll say yes. In a previous conversation we had, I was telling a lot of people in the chat, as men, we're driven by ego, we're motivated by when you attack it, you're just feeding our ego. So women, unfortunately, can't win in a lot of instances with us because you're feeding our ego. Like, I feel like the quickest way to break a man is to just go for his ego. Tell him he's inadequate in a certain thing that a man should, you know, in societal sense, do, right? And so when these things occur, like when we see strength or we see someone going back at us, I feel like at that point we don't know what to do. Our insecurity then kicks in. Because I feel like a lot of us expect to say, you know, jump how high. And when we don't get that response or we don't do that, suddenly we go defensive or we kind of bark up. I feel like we have this expectation that's incredibly stupid and probably a bit outdated as men. But again, that's just my opinion of things. So I feel like when we do see strength, men that know better know how to deal with that or embrace that, they accept it. Or men that don't want to, they just kind of then that rah.
Because I think kind of the kind of contradiction is that a lot of these qualities that we're talking about, like strength, tenacity, those are good things. Those are not bad qualities at all. They are very positive. But as soon as that may challenge a man's masculinity, then all of a sudden it's deemed as negative and problematic. And so a black man, you know, may not want to see those qualities that are normally deemed good. So that's just the point that I wanted to
I would say so. I mean, again, I would love, Kiki, you're right. I would definitely say so, and I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I would love, obviously, again, if a guy could actually, I would like to hear another actual guy's view on that as well, just to see if it's me or not. So yeah, if a guy can actually share that as well, the opinion on that.
If no one's going to chime in, I can. All I was going to say was that I think you're completely right. I think this is going to be something that maybe is more reflective of men than it is of women. But I think that and it depends, again, there's so many variables on this, like your background, your culture, how you've been raised, whether there was a father in the home or not. But I think that there's been a wave of fragile black men, I would say, who don't, I don't know why, and I can't explain it, don't have the resilience to have an equal, or don't have, are not confident in their ability to pair up with someone who could be their equal, or could just be a force to be reckoned with them. I think that sometimes, I think someone spoke about this, there's maybe not enough examples of how that works or what that operates like, or there's not enough education in it. I'm from a generation where, me specifically, I spent a lot of time, this is probably a bad example, but I really like The Cosby Show. And it just maybe like 6 months ago, I watched it from, I don't know, season 1 to season 5 or something like that, and loved it. Okay, Bill Cosby, yeah, I get it. But at the same time, seeing a household full of, you know, alive characters, and Felicia Rashad is Bay #1. But at the same time, I've got to be completely honest that Lisa Bonet was also Bay number 2, and I was in that space where like I'm trapped between the shadism side of it, and then the respect and the awe and the desire for a very powerful matriarch, which maybe is reflective of my culture and where I'm from. And for most of my friends who are Caribbean, there's a strong female figure. Sometimes because there's no male figure around, but I think irrespective, that strength came with, especially within the Cosby Show, came with a beauty. And I think the same thing happens in like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and I can't remember all the other kind of like 90s kind of family shows, black family shows, but like that gave me a sense of like, yeah, that's what I want. I want someone to shut me down when I'm talking trash. I want someone who's gonna you know,
challenge me,
when
I guess.
yeah,
Challenge.
exactly, yeah, because I don't want to be, and when I walk into a ballroom, for example, and I'm suited up, I want to walk in with someone else who's also equally as powerful. So when she speaks for me, and when I speak for her, and that you're getting the same vibe, the same frequency wherever we go. And to me, that was important. So I think maybe I didn't look at necessarily the black nature of it. I just felt like I do want a powerful woman. I want someone who has their own voice. I want someone who's gonna demand the same level of respect and have the same you know, maybe grace, and is someone beautiful, someone who's desired. So again, like when I walk into a ballroom or a dinner, there are people who desire my wife or think that she's beautiful. I want those things, as well as her intellect and ability to be forceful. But I think that comes from, again, like I come from a particular generation, a particular group that looks at family like that. And maybe what it is a break in the standards for males, or their understanding of self, or where they should be, or representation. I don't know. But there's clearly some kind of break there that says, I don't want to be challenged. I want someone who's going to be just like a yes man or yes woman or whatever.
And that's the thing, and I feel like that's why our insecurity is kicking in, because we say that we want this and that. When we face it, we're our own kind of paradox. We face it, we don't want it. But then when we have a woman that we deem weak, we don't want that.
Yeah.
So,
like a chat.
I told you, we can't win.
I honestly think, that I love what you said earlier, but to be honest, theory and practice are two completely different things. And I think, not necessarily speaking about you and your experience, I'm not negating that's what you want, but I think personally, and I will say this, it's not a rise. There's no, that it hasn't been a rise. I think historically, and I'm not going to speak for all black women, but the black women, me and the ones that I know, those men have always been there. The ones who say that they want something, but say that they want a powerful black woman, but they actually don't, and are led by ego. That's always been a thing. Maybe the realization to it is like new, but I think that's always been my experience, especially being like, it's always been like, you're too loud. Like you hear it all the time, like as if I'm supposed to make myself smaller to make you feel more comfortable about yourself. You'll never, ever, ever hear anyone say to a man, he's too loud. That does not happen. Like, oh, he's too, it doesn't happen. And it's like, because especially because I'm a black woman and I know this, because in the flipping office, yeah, Stacey can shout across the room, well, I can't predict something stupid, yeah, but I can say something like, stop doing, like I can be assertive and my voice is loud so it carries, and it's like, oh, are you upset? I'm not upset.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? And I feel like it's because you're so used to black people silencing their voice, I make you feel uncomfortable. And I don't think I only do it in the workplace, I do that around black men. Like, I know not all of them, but a lot of them do. You're too loud, you're too opinion. Ivan, you know this.
Oh, yeah.
Why have you always got to say something to defend black women? Like, there's a lot of...
Is this cultural? Do you think this is cultural, though? Is it UK and US, or is it another kind of phenomenon?
I think that, like, I think for so long, and I think we see it now when black women do speak up and use their voice, we're called bitter. We see that in the UK so much. Like, when a black woman asserts herself or says, I was done wrong by, why are you bringing that up? Why are you complaining? Even things like sexual harassment, which is what we're seeing in the media now. Like, I think Ray Black spoke about something, and it's like, everybody's like, what? The woman says that she's sexually harassed. The thing is, because she's a black woman, it's almost as if she's not allowed to have that agency. Like, she has no agency. She can't speak on her experiences, because as a black woman, you're supposed to take it and keep quiet. You're supposed to keep quiet in pain and suffering. And I think it was I think it's Shireen, as a single mom, which I think is just like, everything you're saying is so beautiful, because it reminds me of my mom too. It's almost as if you can't show different sides of, because you have to kind of get on, complete tasks. And that's like, it's kind of what you have to do to live and to survive, right? But the moment that you show vulnerability or you cry and whatever, you almost feel like you've done a disservice to what it means to be, you know, this Black woman. And I think what somebody else said is so powerful, because it's like, I think it's our responsibility as well to maybe dismantle some of those things.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you know what I mean? To show, to kind of humanize our experiences as well, in order that we raise men that can see that, do you know what, mummy's not happy today. That's okay.
Yeah,
like,
that's okay.
Do you know what I mean? And also, I think as Black boys, and you know, I don't know if they're going to be taught to say I'm not a mum, but I think like it is not necessarily, I don't know if it's like the parent do, but to show that a mum being loving, assertive, and a disciplined, that is love. Do you know what I mean? Like, that is love. That is love. Like, that is the most loving thing. Somebody that provides you a home, do you know what I mean? Raises you. There's no greater love than that. So I think it also comes from how we view and perceive love as well. Because when my mum tells me about myself, she loved, in those moments, as much as I want to, like, you know me, Ivan, like, shout at her, which I don't, because I'm not crazy, but as much as I want to, I know that in those moments, she's actually loving me the most. Does that make sense? Because she just wants me to do better. And I think we have to kind of change our mindset.
Yeah, and I think for me, coming round with my younger son, who's now 14, yeah, I've changed. I've grown up. You know, I had my children quite young, so I've grown up, and I do show that vulnerability. I also work as a coach with young people, young girls and boys from primary school and secondary school. And it's really interesting how early some of these attitudes and feelings start, especially with young Black boys in primary school. Some of their attitudes towards Black women and their Black girlfriends and their peers it's started already from that age, and they're not even gone into year 7 yet. So it's quite interesting how that grows and how that adopts, the circles that they mix with, how women are spoken about, you know, when they're in year 8 and year 9 and going up. So that, you know, I haven't dated a young Black man for many, many years, so I'm out of the circle. Yeah, but I can imagine now, hearing about my friends' experiences and knowing what the boys are like out there and the young men are out there, there is a lot of mind games and mucking about going on. So it's interesting to see how it can start, and how me, you know, be the change you want to see, can start affecting my son now, and saying some of the stuff we said. And I know you said earlier, Elliot, you know, where do we start? What would be, you know, how do we go forward? And for me, the personal thing that I can do is ensure that my youngest son, and the 2 that I've got already, are aware of these things and thinking positively. I'm not saying they have to date Black women. My mum always said to me, you can date white men, but you've got to marry a Black one. I had that in me from a young age. That's what I did. But, you know, that they can feel comfortable in dating who they want, but still be aware, like you said, Ivy, that we should be raising Black women up, full stop. And always be looking out for them, whether it's your mum, sister, the lady down the road, the woman in the supermarket, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I was going to add, I think you said my name last week. Could it be anything to do with actual self-love? I think, obviously, I've heard everyone saying how Black men need to champion Black women. But I think part of the problem is Black men championing themselves as well, and understanding that they are great. Because I think sometimes maybe by a Black man not dating a Black woman, they're actually trying to run away from themselves.
Yes.
And maybe not just running away from themselves, also running away from the Black experience, meaning if they marry Black, then they're having to deal with like another Black family, because obviously, you know, they might have, you know, siblings, cousins, and, you know, whereas sometimes people date outside and it's like a completely different world. It's almost as if they're escaping their reality, and I don't think everyone tends to want to fight that fight. Some people probably been traumatized from the experience of racism that they've grown up in, or prejudice, and they're kind of like, well, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, even if it's not a kind of self-hatred, I think a lot of it is just like a false, superficial sense of love that a lot of Black men have. So, you know, they benefit from beauty standards, for example. So they may see themselves as attractive by society, but my question is, how do you determine self-love? Is it just an exterior thing, or does it actually mean looking introspectively and learning about your history, learning about your experience, that is what self-love is. And I think a lot of Black men, it goes back to my earlier point, which is that they need to take more time to be introspective and really deconstruct a lot of what's going on, as opposed to, like I said, a superficial sense of self-love.
Sorry guys, just to me that sounds a little bit like education though, and I'm not really sure. I guess, sorry, I'm just thinking of this from a kind of a proactive or just realistic perspective in terms of what does that mean? What would we do to get the ball rolling? Like, would it be like chats like this? Would it be webinars? Would there be some kind of I don't know, coach or something to talk about these things?
It's easier said than done, but you'd be surprised how many people just don't know these things, or just don't know any better. So I think just to kind of back up Elliot's point, like what would it take, especially for us to, of course we know we need to do better. I think that's something, I think with a lot of Black men we know this, but again, guilt, insecurity, they won't let us admit it, ego will not allow us to admit it. I think a lot of us do. It just in our actions. Go on, Alex.
Yeah. Sorry, this is my name's Theo. Sorry, I just wanted to
Theo, sorry. Yeah.
That's cool, brother. So I've been listening throughout the whole chat, and I'm really appreciating everything that everyone's saying. And I think, I haven't disagreed with anyone just yet, you know. And but I wanted to, as a married man, Black man, very dark skinned. My wife's dark skinned. And I had to go through those same trials and tribulations that a lot of the men are talking about now in the chat. And the question you asked is like, what do we do? And I personally believe that we haven't created enough forums for our Black women to show their affection, show their elegance to men. And those, for example, I met my wife in a house party, and my wife was the only Black woman there. And that Black woman found a way to say hello to me, smile at me. I smiled back. It was the small moments, and don't get twisted. Yeah, it's superficial. It was a brown sugar moment. It was. However, I was able to see her in her most delightful way, which was smooth. It was relaxed. It was very not mummy, because again, I grew up in Tottenham, single parent household. Mum had to be tough. And my 5 sisters had to be tough, because Black women go through so much. They've had to gain and learn how to build a tough exterior to go through the education process. Even the fact that they've had to question how their hair looks going into school, and that's been lightening up now. So I can only imagine the Black women that are on this chat have had to have questioned their hair, question their skin, question their shape. You know, they've had to kind of go through those processes. And now dealing with my wife, who is a very strong, powerful, woman, which I appreciate. And don't get it twisted, that whole ego thing, from time to time, it flares up. I give it like at least 3 times a month. It might flare up a little bit. And I might have to just give myself a little check and say, hey,
you know it, man. It's all in us. Like, for me, I always tell my sister, I try to fight. Mine's a daily fight with my ego. Like, you just want to say something or you want to do something, but always got to keep it in check. And I think, again, for a lot of us Black men, we just don't care enough to want to do something about it. There are those that do, those that just don't.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I think as Black men, we are now, and I guess when I speak about those forums, is finding that right balance. Again, meeting my wife in that house party, there was a balance. Yes, she had to walk through a room full of white women who have been dared for hundreds of years of being delightful and sweet and intelligent and mothers and wives and business owners. Whereas Black women have had to learn how to defend very early. So I saw someone who was elegant. I saw her elegance and her sweetness. And I feel like there's not many forums, because I can shoot at the Black men all day. But the issue is the forums. There's no places. For example, my mum, and I love my mother for this, but for me to get to the point where I'm now, she had to open my house to allow the youth to come in, sit down, see Black kids sitting, talking, watching movies together, joking around, playing Monopoly, and even though like it was easy, it was basic, but looking back now, I would not be married to the woman I was, because as I believe her name was Kiki, she spoke about the introspective love, and I had to see a Black woman smile when I bust a joke in a room. I had to learn how it feels for a Black woman to compliment me and not try to over sexualize it. I had to try to look at a woman's intelligence and read into that, but it took time. And what I'm saying is we can't expect our young are black young, because I think about them now, the next generation, and even us, we still play, the forums for even us, the people our age, the mid 30s and 20s, you know, the forums where they can dress up nice, even balls. I don't see many balls, but I see, you know, we don't give ourselves those accolades and I don't think that they're I don't think we just have that place where we can just come and be elegant, deem ourselves as kings and queens, and approach our women sweet, or them even feel comfortable around men, being chaperoned amongst noble people. We don't have those forums. We have to go to the club where it's harsh, a harsh environment where everybody's bravado is up. Where we don't, and this is what I'm trying to say. We need to find a way to balance. Again, clubs are necessary, but there has to be a balance of elegant, like you know, that ratchet and that elegance. There has to be a balance for us to have that introspective approach on ourselves as black men, and also allow the women to do the same and deem us as equals. Because again, as I say, my wife is strong every day, and I'm never ever going to take that gift away from her. Because she is a black queen in my eyes, and every black woman on this call and outside is. But that took time for me to actually appreciate that by being in a forum where it's equal.
It just involves killing your ego, isn't it? I tell my sister every day that as a man, the first thing all of us black men have to start doing is killing our ego. They have to, because I still right. It's a lot of things that women mention, right? That women say to us, look, the fact that we suffer racism, but we're men, we still have male privileges. We do. Like, it's not like how my sister said someone could talk to her anyhow. No one in my workplace, I can guarantee, no one of my corporate workers can come to me and talk to me anyhow. Myth. I'll get fired that day. It's fine, and I'll feel no way about it. And again, that's just the male instinct as well. It's so unfortunate that black women have to be cautious. They have to come in and think. You know how tiring it is having to work and be amongst people and then having to put up a front as well. Right. The most tiring thing in society is trying to be something you're not. That's the most tiring thing ever. And it's a shame. And it's like, our job is to then make their lives easier. We shouldn't be burdening them or, you know, thinking that they're our enemy. So we need to, you're right, I really like the idea of what you said about forum, but then we need to, the men that do care and want to do something about it. Because again, let's be real, as much as we're talking, there's a lot of guys who just don't care. And those are the ones that need to be left.
But I agree, but I talk to the mothers. I mean, I don't know how many mothers are in this chat, but you have a home that your children can, that's where they find love first. Some fathers do it in here maybe, and they have a home as well. And I'm going back to, they say charity starts at home, and there is something about home where when you find love there first, because again, as you said, so the gentleman prior to me mentioned about that escapism. You know, we all when we deem a perfect summer holiday, we all envision a different place to home. Look, England ain't cool for summer. We want to go to the States. We want to go to somewhere where there's a palm tree. We want to. That's because it's somewhere else. The grass is always greener. And I guess what's happened is because we haven't found those times, and maybe COVID-19 is allowing us to look at home and say, okay, how do we fix home before I'm looking to run away and spend my investment somewhere else? It's very similar to our love. We need to come back home and say, okay, son, where's your friends? Invite your friends. Like my mum was really big on who's your friends. And when I had my black friend, my sisters brought her black friends, and it was hard for me because I was looking at an attractive black woman and I didn't know how to approach her. But and lo and behold, you know, that those conversations build, and I'm you know, my first crush was one of my sister's best friends. So it's building that forum where we can respectively be black. And I don't want to box our black women in and saying there's only one type of black woman. I've learned throughout my years that there are all varieties of black women in terms of attitude, approach. Like your sister spoke about being told she's loud, but she is just a character. That's her character. She is something that she enjoys speaking in that way. Doesn't necessarily mean all the black women in this chat are loud, but unfortunately we stigmatize black women. And I think at home, if we allow everybody to be different, like I'm sure all of you guys who have siblings know that not all of you guys are the same. There's similarities, but none of you guys are the same. And you siblings can realize your pockets of difference, and you can stand strong in those pockets of difference. And I think we just need to be in a room. And again, I'm talking to the parents who have young children. and allowing their friends who are black and encourage that black approach. And obviously, I mean, I'm not talking for the guys who have lived in predominantly white areas. I don't have that experience, but speaking for someone who's lived in a black area, who's unfortunately my neighbors who were shunning black people because they were scared of, you know, what could occur in a house. My mum opened that door and was allowed me to grow and blossom and have really hard conversations, also soft ones, which blossomed me to being to where I am now. So that's me rambling. I'm sorry, people.
No worries. Thank you so much for that. And I guess as well, you know, just to kind of follow up, I guess I wanted to hear from, I think Alex, I don't know if you wanted to say something in relation to that. I know that's something we will talk about before, if he's still here. If he's not left yet. No, oh yeah, he had to dip. No, I guess, no, thank you for that, Theo, as well. And I guess we're going to be wrapping up soon anyway, but is there kind of like any final words from the women here in terms of what we can actually do to, I guess, make things tangible? I definitely want to do something like this again. I definitely feel these are important. And for me, I've learned quite a bit already just from hearing these experiences and things you may not necessarily understand. So I guess, is there any kind of things we can really take away from start applying it now? Because I definitely want to do something like this quite soon.
Yeah, sorry, carry on.
No,
sorry.
if you go first. I was just, mine was a really quick point to what Theo said as well, was about like, you know, forums and so on. And I think now there's something for everyone now in saying that, like, they are for, like, for example, there's like networking events. There's so many things that you can go to. There's like black networks where they have like dinners and so on. And there's like black speed dating. So sometimes these things are available, but you have to do the extra work to kind of find them, which is hard because they're not necessarily visible. But I think in terms of, if we're speaking about certain attributes as it relates to blackness, they also have to be redefined. So not saying that this is what you're saying, Theo, but sometimes when we look at words like graceful and elegant, sometimes that looks a particular way. And I think sometimes we have to redefine it based on the person's experience. I think that might be something that's quite difficult, but I think we've all done. Like, for example, if somebody is passionate, I'm not angry, I'm passionate. Do you know what I mean? I'm not bossy or rude, I'm assertive. So I think that sometimes, like, it's really important to, number one, understand that, like, yeah, they are forums that exist, but they're just not as visible. And maybe it's our work to kind of like attend those forums, obviously not you, Theo, because I know that you're married, but like in terms of other forums as well, like to meet like-minded people. There's networking events, there's black professional meetups, there's like days at universities, for example, for like postgraduate, where they invite loads of different people to webinars. And there's so many things that we don't necessarily enter those spaces because they're foreign to our experiences, but they are for black people. And I think that that's really important because, again, we are not monolithic. We're so nuanced and we're so different. And I think that those particular type of women or different types of black women, like, we come in so many different types of shapes and sizes and just so, like, it's vast. And I think sometimes we are limited by our own experiences based off of like where we've grown up, what we perceive to be good and bad. And like, I think that those things also need to be redefined a little bit, especially as it pertains to our relationship with one another. And I try that. That's something that I always tell Ivan, that I'm learning. Like, if a guy is like, you know, into things that I'm not into, like, for example, anime, or he likes Dragon Ball Z or something, and he's a black guy, it's like, that don't mean that he's like, that doesn't mean there's nothing wrong with him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we really need to like fix ourselves as well. Like, that doesn't mean like, and if he's a nerd, he's a nerd. What's wrong with that? That didn't kill no one. Do you know what I mean? Like, why is that unattractive? Like, we really need to like do the work within ourselves as well, because a lot of it comes from social conditioning, our culture, what we think is blackness. And I think that we all need to kind of do, that's away from Fear's point, but we all need to do that work internally as well. And at the end of the day, it will only help us, because that way you're going to be appreciative of all the different types of beautiful and wonderful black people that exist. And that's where it starts.
Yeah. No, and I think it's so true. I think that step one, decolonize your own mind, because a lot of the time we have our own biases that we're not aware of. Secondly, in terms of kind of how you socialize amongst other black people, a lot of the time, you know, a lot of it is just kind of, for me, for example, like I said, coming from a predominantly white environment, a lot of the time I ask my friends, oh, are there any events? I have a lot of friends who maybe go to spoken word events, who go to certain parties, who go to just random events. It doesn't have to be a serious talk or, oh, I'm going to go to this forum and study about Black history. It doesn't have to be like that. It could just be, oh, hey, can you recommend, or, you know, if you're going somewhere, let me come with you. And I think for me, that's how I've become to, you know, that's how I have been in a lot of Black spaces is just purely just by asking my friends, asking people, hey, like this event looks cool, do you want to come along? Or, oh, I saw this thing online, let's go. Like even for my birthday, I wanted to go to a museum dedicated to Black art. I just went on the internet, typed in Black art, and there was something happening in the National Gallery, and I went and I met a lot of other Black people there. So a lot of the time it's just doing your own research, asking people, and yeah, it's a gradual, and also just to remember that it's a gradual process. It's not going to happen overnight. That's another thing that I want to reiterate, that, you know, this is a journey. And so you can't expect that in 2 days, I'm going to go to all the forums that exist. I'm going to be around all Black people all the time. It is a journey, but a lot of it is being proactive.
Sorry, Kiki, do you think that there's a, obviously with the change that's going on right now, there's a lot of, I guess, movement with Black Lives Matters, the protests, and I don't know if you guys are feeling the same thing, but like there's a lot of groups being developed, especially around Black businesses, and you know, and forums for conversations about what do we do as a community, even though the community is very large. And I wonder, do you envision any changes happening, as much as they're happening in the US, happening here in the UK, in which we can connect in another way? And like I think, like I said at the beginning, some of the conversations I'm having, which is about rebranding the Black collective, and what does it mean to be in a Black pairing, or to have a Black partner?
I think that is such a good point. And I think the point that you raise about culture, I think is so key, because I think quite often the African-American narrative is what dominates, but they don't own the narrative. African-Americans don't own the Black narrative. And I think that a lot of the time I have had to remember that I am Black British, and so there are a lot of nuanced issues that we have to face. And I think you raised a really good point about Black businesses. I think that, I was talking to my friend about this the other day, I think one of the most important ways to connect with Black people is to financially invest in each other. I think that is so important. You know, and my friend was saying that, Kiki, next time we meet up, we're going to go to a Black owned restaurant, you know, we're going to buy, you know, books by Black authors. And I think that I think is so key in fostering any sort of relationship with any other Black person. In order for us as a collective to build ourselves up, a lot of it is financially investing in each other, you know, looking for Black owned brands. So for example, I need to throw away all of my makeup. I want to now invest in Black owned makeup, right? Go to events held by Black people, going to Black restaurants. So a lot of it, I completely agree. A lot of it is how we financially invest in each other. And I'm sure there are a lot of forums that are dedicated to kind of like Black businesses, or, you know, people who, even on Facebook, there's this really huge group called Black Owned Economy. I don't know if people can see that on Facebook, where so many Black people are sharing their businesses. And that's a really powerful way to uplift each other, definitely through your pocket.
I think just to add quickly off of what you said, Kiki, as well, is like we also have to come out of the understanding that the white man's ice is colder. And I think that a lot of us, when we talk about like investing in our own communities, I think a lot of people look for just what you do in your leisure time to be at a close proximity to whiteness. A few of my friends are in here. We only ever party mainly at Black events. And we put our money in our, that's something that we've always done. Do you know what I mean? Like we don't go to, like, we've gone to West End maybe twice because we know they don't like us. That's been our experience and we never went back. We party in our ends. We love our culture. We invest in our culture. We rave in our culture. Like, and I think those things are so imperative. Like, I've never gone to a restaurant up west where like there's white servers and stuff. I've been like, this is where it's at. Like, I feel the same way when I go to a Black owned restaurant. And I think a lot of it is your mind as well, because yes, invest in Black businesses 100%, but then also there's 3 things that come into that. The service may not be as good. Do the education to understand that there's a lack of resources when it comes to Black businesses. The top that you buy may be slightly overpriced to what you're usually paying and Pretty Little Thing or whatever. Understand that is for a reason. It's because they don't get as much backing. They don't have the same manufacturers as these big companies, and they don't get the same backing with influencers. So I think we have to educate ourselves as well, because often what happens is people go on this thing and then they're disheartened, because what happens, they're like, I'm only going to shop Black. I'm going to, you know, invest in Black businesses, and they stop. And the reason why they stop is because education is key, because unless you educate yourself, you might be disappointed. Like, you might go to a Black owned restaurant and you think, oh, it's not like, do you know what I mean? It's not like the white man. The white man's ice is colder. Do you know what I mean? Because you feel like the service is better, or there's more selection of food, or the area's nicer, right? But so I think it really, really does play a part into understanding how Black businesses come to be, the lack of resources that they get, and how harder it is for us to open our own things. And I think that should be the driving force. And I think as long as we make those tiny changes, they lead to bigger changes. Because for me, I've always invested in Black people, always. And I could do more so now, but I think a part of it is because I love my culture. Like I love the fact that I grew up in South East London. I love the fact that I grew up around Caribbeans. I love Caribbean music. I love Africans. Like that's been my culture, my experience. And I've never ran away from it and thought that, oh, but Hackathon's better and Nobu's better. I've never thought like that. Doesn't mean I haven't gone there, but I think a lot of it starts from the mind, because if you keep thinking that the white man's ice is colder, it's your attitude. You see what I'm trying to say? Like it will only be a short-term and short-lived thing. Like you might start investing in Black businesses and you'll stop tomorrow because your mind is still like better is outside of our community. So I think you have to do that as well. And also understand that when you do invest in Black businesses, you're investing in yourself. So
Definitely. Definitely. And I think also as well, I totally agree with you that there are a lot of Black services that may be, you know, not as good quality. But again, it goes back to the idea of not giving up on ourselves. Okay, yes, that may not be a good service. And I will tell you, not obviously in a rude way, but I want to see us improve on ourselves. And a lot of the time is not just, oh, this is really crap, so bye, I'm just going to go to the white people again. It's like, no, this isn't good. I'm going to give you constructive feedback on what you can do better, and I'm still going to continue investing in you.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important, not giving up on ourselves so quickly. So yes, we can invest. Yes, we can acknowledge that there are certain businesses that do need to improve, but continuing to invest is what's going to make us better.
Yeah. And I just wanted to kind of add in there that I find that, and tell me if this doesn't resonate with anyone, but I feel as if like Black women, bringing it back to the topic, seem to manage to be able to hold up that system better than Black men do. I've noticed that in a lot of groups that I've been a part of, there is a lot of, whether it's true or not, I don't know, a lot of positive reinforcement coming from Black women together and trying to find ways to build, I guess, connections and to get things to work. I find that with Black men, especially I think in the group that you mentioned, Kiki, I think we're both in the same one. It's like 46,000 people.
I know.
Anyway, which is, I think there's multiple problems there, and this is a longer conversation which I've had with Theo and other friends of mine. But I think that there's definitely going to be an issue with vetting those groups, because those groups are massive, right?
Exactly.
I've seen people who've come through with goods where I've been like, that is absolutely excellent, and purchased right away without even thinking about it. And then there's been other individuals who've come on there and said, I'm a singer, buy my album, and I'm like, oh, bro, man, you're really hurting the system. That's not, you know. But what I've noticed about Black women, which I really hope that this is not me with my kind of like super pro-Black eyes on, is they have conversations. And I think even when they don't agree with someone's goods or don't like it, they find a way to keep a conversation going that is positive. And I think what I wonder is, I guess my question is that true, or is that a fallacy? Is there shutting down happening behind closed doors? Because I think men are more upfront, and I think women sometimes can wait before they give you the genuine. I don't know if that's true, if that's me projecting something. And then secondly, I think I feel as if like women have always been the backbone of Black integrated businesses together. Definitely. And I wonder, do you envision that developing, and in what way will it develop? Like, how is it going to develop into something more robust and more permanent? Because I feel like we've been here before. I've seen this happen before, maybe with my I guess my aunt's generation, and maybe with my mum's generation, where it looked solid. It looked like it was going to plant itself, and it usually stems from something negative that's happened. So Black people being unemployed at a higher rate than their white counterparts, and that coming out in the news, or someone's been treated badly or received abuse on the football pitch, and and Black women have got together and said, nope, that's it, enough, let's try and figure out our own thing. But yeah, just open to the floor. Like, what do people think? Anyone? Is there
No,
a lot in there?
yeah. It's just it's really layered. I think in terms of black men and black women, it's difficult to say, you know, whether I don't, it's so difficult to answer. I think one thing I did think about in you saying this is the idea of expansion and ownership, and generational wealth. I think that's the key to really sustaining Black business and Black economy. It's the generational wealth, and I think that's something that we are still struggling to achieve. A lot of the time we have businesses that are only going to sustain just a little area, a little radius of the community, and that doesn't expand. And I think that what I want for our people is to be able to expand our businesses in a way that money can always be generated for generations to come. That is what's going to build that robustness within our economy. Now, in terms of Black women upholding the businesses and Black men, I'm still struggling to find an answer to that. I don't know. I really, really don't know. I think that a lot of the businesses that I've said, I don't know, something like cooking, like a lot of kind of cooking businesses, that stems from a passion, it stems from a culture, it stems from a tradition. There are a lot of men who, I don't know, they own barbershops. There are, I don't know, but I don't know, guys, I need help. I don't even know how to answer this question about whether Black women are better at upholding these businesses than Black men. I can't answer that.
No worries, but we are on time, unfortunately. So
yeah. That'll be something to think about then.
Yeah,
wait, I think,
we are on time.
guys, wait, Ivan, quickly. I think Lynette
sure.
quickly answer that.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Oh, is it all right?
Yeah, go on, this is the last one.
Okay, cool. I don't have a definitive answer, but I know that from my personal experience, I've received just as much support from men, Black men, as I have from women. And I've seen it in the different silos that I'm in, that there's been no differentiation. There's one guy that I met at a conference once, and we were having a conversation. He said something that always stuck with me: your vibe attracts your tribe. And I feel like it goes back to like that self-love and that self-worth and that self-worth. Like when you kind of look introspectively and you kind of work on yourself and you start becoming the person that you like, your full self and your higher self, you start attracting the right kind of people. So the people that are going to uplift you, the people that are going to support you, the people that are going to tell you that Black women are beautiful, or tell you that Black men are handsome, or tell you that you're successful and tell you how you're going to do it. Like there's people in this group that I'm in a couple of groups with, and we're all kind of, whether we're talking about the books that we're reading, whether we're talking about our enterprises, we're all like, that's my support system, do you know what I mean? And that started with me kind of learning to value myself more, and then just naturally the universe worked in my favor and attracted all these people to me. So I definitely think it's that whole vibe attracts our tribe thing.
Thank you, Lee, for that.
Wait, and I just wanted to say to Elliot's point, quickly, just to add to that, Lynette, vibe attract tribe. It's the same way that you said that you're not around those people that say derogatory and mad things about Black women, right?
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same thing. When you operate in that space, you ain't going to be around nobody that isn't for us, right?
It's like that,
comes in the space of Black men, and it also pertains to Black women. The men in my life are fantastic. They only tell me that I'm beautiful. When I have my natural hair out in 2 plaits, they'll be like, keep it like that. Like that is what they're like, and I need that because the world is telling me don't keep it like that. And I think that is so important, imperative. Like if I have a business idea, when Lynette has like multiple businesses, multiple PhD student, all these things, but when she's doing what she's doing, we all come out in full support because, as you said, like attracts like. Like we need to all get to, and Ivan always says this, not everybody can come. It's not our job. Ivan always tells me this, like you do not need everybody.
That's why I can never be Prime Minister of this country. I let the idiots die and I let those that are prosper go. I let them die. Die, D-I-E, die. And then let everyone else prosper. I have no time to pick up anyone. I have no time.
Yeah. So he's always like that, and I think that that's so important. I think we should spend less time on trying to like convince them, like stop trying to appeal to consciousness that does not exist. Black and white, and white. Like your skin, all your skin folk ain't your kin folk. And I think when you go down that thing of like, because Elliot, I can see that in you, like you try to like hold people together and take everybody and uplift us all. It's just unrealistic. Like just because somebody's Black, it doesn't.
One of the things that's one of the things I love about Elliot. That's one of the things I adore about Elliot. He's just a good heart for everybody. But it's like I told Elliot as well, man. Not everyone can go. It's that real. Not everyone can.
Yeah,
I've been like that.
It's like Rick Ross said, not everybody's gonna make it, and it's true.
There you go.
It's true. It's probably not the best person to quote from, but that's why I had
Yeah, thank you. So with that anyway, but thank you everybody for tuning in today. You know, man, I like to keep things on the schedule, so I'm glad that we didn't go too overboard. But no, it was really great nonetheless. I'm definitely going to do more things like this if this is what people want, if this is what people are after.
Definitely.
Yes.
So, thank you. Cool. So
Yeah,
now I'll definitely do it. Then I need you lot to invite your friends so we can get thousands of people in it. There's a couple records I want to beat, so like Zoom records. So
also, can people put that if they're comfortable? Can people quickly before we go? Yeah,
put in your chat your
details or like
yeah. But you know, so I'll leave this open for a few minutes. People want to enter their chats or information, but I will do more of these things. Me and Donna from last chat, we got to talk tomorrow, which we're going to make a global session. So we're going to have a lot of Americans and we're going to have a lot of Black UK. No, but I'm talking to the woman tomorrow to plan it. So it'll be sometime next month. So we're going to have a big global discussion about that. So we'll be in, and we're going to have a proper facilitator as well. So the Americans and us, and see what we can do. And there'll be that. So again, if everybody please follow us, we are Spiela on socials. Check out our website. That's where a lot of our content, this video, and everything will be found. So yeah, if you follow, support the community, we're the Spiela. This is the way it's all happening. And if you want to drop any details, like you're at your socials, I guess. Naomi said what details. Drop your socials, please. So everybody can follow, share. We want to build a community culture. We're all about community Spiela. So
yeah, we had a really good one with Spiela like 2 months ago when we were talking about tangible solutions.
It was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and it was really good because like in my line of work, I met so many contacts and mentorship programs with like young kids and stuff. That's good.
Yeah, and so as you can see, you know, Lynette's my family, Ivy's my family. You can see the excellence that I came from. So
he's so blessed. He's so blessed.
And I just like to
thank you, Ivan, for putting this on.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
It's been amazing.
No worries. It's all about community, man. Like I said, Jay-Z said, nobody wins when the family feuds. I really want all of us to come together. Yeah. So, you know, it's all about supporting one another and starting from here. So I will make my conscious effort to make sure that we have more of these engagements, more of these community stuff going on. So yeah, if you guys just follow Spiela and support, we'll make it happen.
Thanks, Ivan. I'm just adding people.
Yeah, please do. Go ahead. But yeah, with that being said, for those that are football fans, Liverpool won the Prem. I hate it, but so I had to get it out there.
Oh my gosh, my dad must be so happy. That's my dad's team.
I'm quite upset, so I'm gonna go have a cold one.
Shake it off.
Yeah. So yeah, but no, jokes aside though, thank you, Ronnie. Yeah, please leave all your information down now. I know Kiki wanted to get in touch with Ivy, so I've given you the email. But Kiki, this is Ivy. Ivy, this is Kiki.
Thank you so much.
I'm good friends with her brother. I love her brother to bits.
Yes.
So that's my dude. Her brother's my dude. So yeah. So I need a Liverpool fan. Oh, get out of
I know.
PJ. Oh, go away. You're gonna call me later. Oh, go away. No, I don't talk to him. But yeah.
Let me say hello to Jeppo as well. Hi, Jeppo. Seen you for ages. Nice
hi,
to see
Jeppo.
you.
Guys, also, I'm putting in my work email because everybody will tell you I'm terrible with like my personal email.
Okay.
So if it's got a weird little thing, then it says Nutanic. So
okay. Oh, thank you so much, because I emailed you on your personal one.
Oh, see, Lynette's gonna just screw me right now. Look at her face.
I don't respond to anything.
No.
Nothing on it. Should I look at it?
She doesn't respond to her personal, sorry.
My personal email, I don't know what it is. You know, because you've got the work email, that's all, I'm always, like, it's literally, Lynette hates it. She's like, can you look at your email, please? And I'm not, I should get rid of it. But my work one, I'm always on it. So
I see.
But now I'm going to check it just for you. I'm going to check it right.
And we've got some cool things we've got lined up for the community as well. So we'll let that, me and Ivy have got some really cool things going on next month. So we'll let you guys know that sooner near the time. So, but yeah, I think everyone's taking stuff down. So yeah, thank you everybody very much.
Thank you so much.
We'll have a lovely evening. And yeah, we'll catch up soon. So I'll send out details for the next one on the socials. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Ivan.
Thank you.
Okay, guys.
Thank you, Ivan.
No problem.
Thank you.